And a good Monday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show on our first full show of 2026. Happy New Year to you. Thanks for joining us live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook, or of course 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. You can also take again the show on demand by visiting the website nickcraig.com. Our show this morning is brought to you as always in part by Melissa Gott and the Law Group. For any legal challenges you might be facing, lawgroupnc.com or 910-251-6088. We kick off the show this morning. We've got a busy news cycle that we'll get into in a couple of minutes, but a pretty major milestone announcement as we are just about to cross the 1-year mark of the Nick Craig Show podcast here across southeastern North Carolina. I'm excited to announce that starting today, and this will not have any changes and will not impact the live show that we do at all, but starting today, the podcast of this show will be heard nightly across the Charlotte radio metro. From 9 to 10 p.m. every weekday evening, the Nick Craig Show podcast will be heard almost in its entirety on WBT radio in Charlotte. The ability to be back on the air and have an opinionated talk show of which this very much is for anybody that's been tracking it or following it now for going on almost a year. You know how important that is to me. So starting tonight and each and every weeknight going forward, at least for the foreseeable future, the Nick Craig Show will be aired across a brand new market in across the state of North Carolina, the state's largest media market in Charlotte, and that starts again tonight, 9 to 10 Eastern time. It will not have any effect on our live show. Still doing the show here weekday mornings, 7 o'clock on all of our live platforms. It will still be available on podcast shortly after 8 o'clock or when we wrap up each and every weekday morning. But to bring in that brand new audience, the brand new market, and to be have this show back on a terrestrial radio in Charlotte is just an unbelievable honor and pleasure. Thanks to Mike Schaefer, the great program director at WBT, for the opportunity. Thanks to all of you for your continued support over the last year, and had some big plans, wanted to accomplish a lot with this show as we worked into 2026, and I can't think of a better way to kick off the new year and to re-energize the program and officially cross that 1-year mark than to introduce that brand new radio market in Charlotte. So thanks to all of you who support the show on Patreon and have done so, have been incredibly generous over the last 12 months or so. Thanks to Melissa Gott and her team over at the Law Group for their trust and their support, their financial support of the program. And thanks to all of you who watch and listen to the program each and every weekday. You'll be able to hear it. Not all of you, or most of you, maybe any of you listening to the podcast live this morning are in the Charlotte market, but there are a lot of people, tens of thousands, that will have the opportunity to hear this show every weekday, or every weeknight, I should say, 9 to 10 p.m. on WBT Radio in Charlotte, Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM WBT. So an absolute honor and pleasure. Looking forward to adding that new audience that will begin today. Also making some changes to our podcast feeds. So if you're having any issues with that, shoot me an email or send me a message on X or Facebook or anywhere else as reconfiguring some things, moving on to a new provider in the new year as well. So a lot of changes, a lot of things staying the same as we kick off 2026. We start off with what has been a very busy start to the new year. It's kind of interesting for those that are in and around media, follow news pretty closely. For the most part, and typically you have a pretty big lull of news and content about a 3 or 4 week span, maybe a week or so before Christmas, a week or so after the new year. Things just kind of generally slow down. You've got a lot of people across the country that are taking time off, lengthy PTO sessions between Christmas and the new year. And so typically the news cycle is pretty slow. But as we learned over the weekend, it has been anything but slow for the Donald Trump administration, as the major news over the weekend was the fact that Nicolas Maduro, the Venezuelan dictator, president, I'll put that in air quotes for those listening, the president of Venezuela was captured by the United States early Saturday morning as what can only be described as maybe one of the most precise military operations in modern history. I'm not going to say ever. If you go back and look at history, you look at World War I and World War II, you look at parts of the founding of our nation, there were a lot of very strategic, some cases military, other cases just battle operations that took place. I don't want to underscore any of the unbelievable fights that have taken place throughout U.S. or world history, which included strength and incredible leadership on the U.S. front. But in modern history, hard to argue that there has been anything more precise than what we witnessed here in the United States, what the world witnessed Saturday morning, around 1 o'clock Eastern time, Saturday morning, 2 o'clock a.m. Local time in portions of Venezuela, as the United States went in to Venezuela, were able to capture Nicolas Maduro and his wife at a compound, some sort of house that they were occupying. He was attempting to, Maduro that is, was trying to get to some sort of safe room shelter. You would imagine with all of the political pressure that he's been facing, he's got pretty quick access to rooms that are steeled in, 6 feet worth of concrete on either side, a very strong facility to make sure that he doesn't have to deal with any major issues. The United States was able to make its impact within Venezuela, storm the compound of the Venezuelan dictator, take him, reports out late in the day on Sunday, early in the day on Monday, indicate wiped out nearly all of Maduro's private security team. No fatalities on the U.S. front. There were some kind of conflicting reports, maybe some injuries. I know that the president noted Saturday that there was a U.S. helicopter that was slightly damaged. However, that helicopter it didn't crash or go down. It was able to make its way back to its original location without any major mechanical issues or anything like that. From all accounts, an unbelievable military operation. And I'm going to just start off with this, and this needs to be restated. And I'm sure if you're somebody on the left side of the political aisle, you're probably going to say to yourself, stop talking about Joe Biden. Stop talking about the previous administration. But I'm not. It is absolutely critical for people to be able to draw the contrast between what we saw the previous 4 years and what we are seeing right now. Look at the military operations that took place under the Biden administration. Look at the abject failure that was the Afghanistan withdrawal, giving up Bagram Air Force Base, leaving behind, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of crucial strategic military infrastructure and equipment, putting that in the hands of the Taliban, putting that in the hands of terrorist organizations in the Middle East that want to see the United States, want to see the Western world collapse. That's what military operations looked like under the previous administration. The Afghanistan withdrawal was a complete and total freaking disaster. You compare and contrast that with what unfolded Saturday night in Venezuela. You cannot find, I don't know that you'll be able to find anything that are more polar opposites than that. And this comes back to something that has been a long thread on the Nick Craig Show here for going on a year now, which is the true difference in strong leadership. It does make a difference. Joe Biden was the president. Donald Trump is the president now. They both held the same title. They both had the same authorities. Their title was the same. They operated as president and everything that comes of that in the same manner. But the way in which they go about operating as the commander-in-chief, the way in which those two individuals, frankly, handled their business could not be any different. And you've heard me say a lot. One of the things that I appreciate about Donald Trump and this administration, and it's not just the president, it's the people he's surrounded himself with. Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, General Raising Kane. These individuals are strong leaders. Now, just because you're a strong leader doesn't mean that everything always goes well. There was a lot at risk here. Can you imagine the situation where the U.S. is unsuccessful in capturing Maduro? He is able to get to that bunker, that steel reinforced facility in his compound, and is able to lock himself in there without the U.S. being able to get in. Imagine the situation where U.S. forces lost their lives. There's a very real possibility of that, right? You have a midnight raid taking place in a foreign country, as the president noted on Saturday, in the dark of night taking place. There very well could have been a situation where we could be talking about this morning a failed and botched operation in Venezuela that led to the death of U.S. service members, husbands, wives, children. That would have been a complete and total disaster. But that was not a deterrent for this administration. Important part of the equation, absolutely. Mitigating any risk to U.S. forces, absolutely. But the key difference between what you saw in the years past and what you're seeing now is the willingness to lead, the willingness to make strong decisions, tough decisions. Trump, Hegseth, Rubio, everybody around him, General Kane, they didn't guarantee, they didn't know for certain that this operation would go off without a hitch. They didn't know for certain that everything was going to work out, that they would be able to successfully capture Maduro. The fact that U.S. service members were putting their lives at risk, they didn't know how this was going to play out, but they were willing to do it. And I've said it 1,000 times, and I'll say it 1,000 times more. The one thing I appreciate about President Donald Trump and the people he has surrounded himself with is that they are willing and able to make tough, hard decisions, things that could backfire, things that could blow up in their face, things that could cause there to be a lot of public pressure on this administration. But they're not scared by it. They're willing to do it. They're willing to take that risk. And that really, to me, highlights the keen difference between weak leadership, of which we saw in the past under the Biden administration, and strong leadership that we see now under the 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Plain and simple. That is truly the difference between weakness and strength. And again, I don't know that you'll find any larger contrast of issues like the one that we're talking about this morning. The capture of Maduro Saturday in Venezuela and the failed, botched withdrawal of Afghanistan. I don't know that you'll find two more contrasting events than that. And so as we continue with this, the reaction has been almost unbelievable. I try not to use that word very often because I think it's overused in large part. You hear everybody, oh, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. This isn't necessarily unbelievable. The reaction from those on the political left is almost exactly what you would expect. Donald Trump has now got Democrats on the record seemingly in favor of a dictator, a Venezuelan dictator in Nicolas Maduro. This is how broken the political left is right now in our nation. This is how broken Democrats are right now. Donald Trump has put them in a position where they are on social media, they are on cable news, they are on the Sunday morning talk shows talking about a situation in which they are on the side of a Venezuelan drug lord dictator in Nicolas Maduro. And how about the rank and file Democrats? Over the last year, Donald Trump was inaugurated almost 1 year ago, became the 47th president. Since that period of time, we have seen thousands of protests taking place across the country. One of the most prominent is the No Kings protest, right? You've heard this before. You've heard the chants. You've seen all of the middle-aged and older white women standing on street corners around the United States holding up their sign, Donald Trump is a fascist. No kings. Donald Trump is a dictator. No kings. Orange man bad. You've seen these photos, and they've taken a lot of pride in being able to be la resistance against this administration, as if standing on a street corner on 4th of July weekend when everybody is out enjoying their time, celebrating America, enjoying time with their friends and family, taking a couple of days off work, relaxing, enjoying the freedom that we have here in our country. What are they doing? They're standing on street corners yelling and screaming about a presidential election, of one that now happened more than a year ago, back in November of 2024. So the No Kings people, this is important. Follow me through on this. The No Kings people, the No Kings crowd, who have been at this for a year now, are now upset that the United States of America captured a almost legitimate king in the state of Venezuela, or the country of Venezuela, I should say. Nicolas Maduro has had multiple elections that have not gone his way and has decided that he is going to ignore the results, that he is going to ignore the will of the people in Venezuela. This is exactly what Democrats have been crying on street corners about for the last year. Literally the exact same thing. No kings, no kings, no kings. Trump is a fascist. Trump is a dictator. Trump is a this. Trump is a that. And now they are seemingly on the side of a now dethroned Venezuelan dictator akin to a king? There's no consistency with these people's argument at all. There never has been, there never will be. But it is a little bit surprising to me, and I've seen a lot. It takes a lot to surprise me, especially in politics. It is a little bit surprising that Donald Trump has forced this crowd into being on the side of an illegitimate president, a literal dictator in Nicolas Maduro. Even for me, it's a little bit shocking. It's a little bit surprising. Because that's what their whole thing has been now for literally a year. They eat, breathe, and sleep as being the resistance to the king, put that in air quotes, that exists here in the United States. That's all they talk about. It's all they post on social media about. While you spend your weekends with your friends and your family, a little bit of R&R, a couple of days off from work, while you're spending your time relaxing with your family and your friends on any given weekend, these individuals are standing on street corners across the United States protesting the president now for a year. It's all they're about. It's all that they do. And once again, Donald Trump has broken them. Once again, Donald Trump has put them in a situation where they look like complete and total morons, complete and total hypocrites. So you're against kings in the United States, as I understand it from these people. I've listened to them. I've watched their rallies online. I've had the pleasure of seeing it firsthand when I'm out enjoying a Saturday, throughout the state of North Carolina and downtown Wilmington. I'm trying to enjoy my Saturday, and these clowns are lining the streets, yelling and screaming about Trump. But now they're on the side of Nicolas Maduro, the brutal drug kingpin dictator that was the head and running the country of Venezuela. Where's the consistency? Here's the former vice president of the United States. Thank God that's her title. Kamala Harris. This was her reaction to the operations conducted by the United States on Saturday. She writes in part on a post on X, Donald Trump's actions in Venezuela do not make Americans safer, stronger, or more affordable. That Maduro is a brutal, illegitimate dictator does not change the fact that this action was both unlawful and unwise. We've seen this movie before. Wars for regime change or oil that are sold as strength but turn into chaos, and American families pay the price. The American people do not want this, and they are tired of being lied to. This is not about drugs or democracy, writes Harris on X. It is about oil and Donald Trump's desire to play the regional strongman. If he cared about either, he wouldn't have pardoned a convicted drug trafficker or sidelined Venezuela's legitimate opposition while pursuing deals with Maduro's cronies. The president is putting troops at risk, spending billions, destabilizing a region, and offering no legal authority, no exit plan, and no benefit at home. America needs leaderships whose priorities are lowering costs for working families, enforcing the rule of law, strengthening alliances, and most importantly, putting the American people first. When I read this post, I was shocked by the last sentence here. Americans need leadership, lowering costs, enforcing the rule of law, putting American people first. It sounds like something coming out of a Republican's mouth. Had Kamala Harris used this same tack when she was running for president of the United States, she may have won. But that's not what she was promoting when she was running for president. She didn't care about enforcing the rule of law. She didn't care about lowering costs for working families. She didn't care about putting the American people first. She was the border czar. She oversaw the importation of millions of illegals into the United States of America, making American streets less safe, causing prices to rise, causing housing supply to be pinched by those illegally in the United States. You read this post, you sub out her name with almost anybody else's, and this is a pretty good post. Americans need leadership whose priorities are lowering costs for working families, enforcing the rule of law, strengthening alliances, and most importantly, putting the American people first. Wow. Pretty interesting post there from Harris. Oh, and by the way, here's an article from the New York Times, January 10th, 2025. The Biden administration said on Friday that it was offering $25 million for information leading to the arrest of Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, after he assumed a third term in office despite evidence suggesting that he lost Venezuela's recent election. So it maybe sounds like old Vice President Harris here being a little inconsistent with her commentary. Apparently, this should not have been done. This doesn't need to happen. Meanwhile, in the final days of the Biden-Harris administration, January the 10th, 2025, just a couple of days before Trump was sworn in, they offered a $25 million reward leading to the arrest of Nicolas Maduro. Complete and total inconsistency from those on the political left. But are you surprised by the inconsistency? And I'm asking this genuinely. Are you surprised? I feel like I've seen it all now. This is not something that has just started in the second Trump term either. This has been an ongoing effort, action, however you'd like to phrase it, going on almost 10 years now. There is zero consistency with those on the political left. They chant no kings in our streets, yet are in favor of a king in Venezuela. They chant about democracy, yet will do everything in their power to usurp said democracy as long as it means that they're in charge. There's just no consistency at all. And it's obvious that the American people are seeing through it. I'm not trying to put the old record on repeat, but this is part of the reason why Donald Trump was so successful in 2024. The American people were able to see through this garbage, see through this nonsense, and kick the Biden-Harris administration to the curb. And thank God that they did. That you don't want somebody like Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, who is announcing the end of his political career due to the rampant amount of fraud, Somali fraud taking place in his home state of Minnesota. You wanted those two leading the country? Are you kidding me? The lack of consistency is truly eye-popping on the political left. And it's not just Harris. Here is Democrat Senator Chris Murphy. He is on the Foreign Relations Committee. He was on CNN over the weekend as these discussions took place all throughout the weekend and will likely continue to take place for the foreseeable future over the Maduro situation. Here's another prominent Democrat on cable news talking about the situation over the weekend. Take a listen.
Venezuela is not a security threat to the United States. They're not threatening to invade us.
Now, hold on a second here. Hold on. Now, they might not be trying to invade us. I agree with that. They don't have a legitimate they didn't have a legitimate president. You had a propped up fake dictator. They have no real military. So I agree that they're not a security threat to the United States in terms of invading the U.S. I don't fall asleep at night panicking that one day I'm going to wake up and Venezuela is going to be controlling portions of the United States. I'll admit that's not a main concern of mine. But if they weren't a concern or a security threat at all, why the hell did the Biden-Harris administration put out a $25 million reward in the final days of that administration? Something doesn't seem to add up here. $25 million is I'm going to say a pretty large sum of money. I think that's a fair statement to make. I try not to play in broad generalizations, but I'm going to argue. I'm going to make the point that $25 million is a lot of money. They were offering that reward just days before the Trump administration took over. And now you've got Senator Chris Murphy saying, they're no threat at all. They're not a security threat to the United States at all. Take a listen.
Venezuela is not a security threat to the United States. They're not threatening to invade us. There is no terrorist group like Al-Qaeda operating there that has plans to attack the United States.
There's just, there's just Tren de Aragua. There's just rampant amounts of drug trafficking. There's all of those other good things. There's hundreds of thousands of Americans overdosing each and every year. But yeah, no threat to the United States. I mean, who cares if your high school kid is ODing after getting some sort of a knockoff Adderall from one of their friends that's laced with fentanyl, which came in trafficked into the United States by Tren de Aragua. It's not a real threat, according to Senator Chris Murphy. Again, he's on the Foreign Relations Committee, this individual, high-profile Democrat.
To the extent that you care about the drug trade, yes, they produce drugs, but those drugs go to Europe. Fentanyl is the drug that's killing Americans. That's not coming from Venezuela. Venezuela produces cocaine. 90% of it is not coming to the United States. This seems to be mostly about oil and natural resources. Donald Trump's entire foreign policy is corrupt. Russia, the Middle East, and now Venezuela is all about making money for his friends. And Wall Street, the oil industry, they can make a lot of money off of Venezuela if they run it. You saw within hours of the invasion, the announcement of a group of Wall Street investors, energy industry investors, planning a trip to Venezuela to make money off of this invasion, off of this ouster. So unfortunately, once again, you're seeing that this president's foreign policy, the invasion of Venezuela, the ouster of Maduro, is about making his crowd filthy rich. It has nothing to do with American national security.
So I guess would it be fair to say that stopping the war between the Iranian-backed Hamas terror group operating in the Gaza Strip and Israel, would you say that stopping that war was, I guess, again, according to the great senator and Chris Murphy, that was also to enrich Donald Trump and enrich himself? They've been running on this meme now for like a decade. Anything and everything Donald Trump does is to enrich himself. Meanwhile, under the previous administration, hate to go back, but I have no choice. You literally had the vice president at the time when Joe Biden was the vice president's son making $1 million a month working for a Ukrainian oil company. But Nick, that's off limits. Nick, you're not allowed to talk about that. That's a different situation. So that's all it's about, according to Senator Chris Murphy. It's about making Donald Trump's friends rich. To hell with the Tren de Aragua gang members that are pillaging U.S. cities, taking over apartment complexes in states, killing U.S. citizens. None of that is relevant. According to Senator Chris Murphy, it's all about Donald Trump and making his friends rich. This has been said now for 10 years. It's never come to fruition. It is absolutely a boy who cried wolf situation with those on the political left right now. Anything and everything that this president does, I mean, literally anything, folks, anything he does is the worst thing that we've ever seen in world history, not even U.S. history, the history of the world. Anything that Donald Trump does. No consistency, nothing to back it up, just crying over spilled milk. If Maduro was such a benign character and Venezuela was not a threat at all, again, why the hell in the final days of the Biden-Harris administration did they offer a $25 million reward for his arrest? Those two things cannot exist in the same universe, yet here we are talking about it right now. Absolutely zero consistency from those on the left. The Secretary of State in Marco Rubio was on with NBC News' Meet the Press this weekend. As you can imagine, the left-wing reaction to this has been exactly what you would expect. Here's Rubio on NBC.
That required congressional approval. In fact, it couldn't require congressional approval because this was not an invasion. This is not an extended military operation. This is a very precise operation that involved a couple of hours of action. It was a very delicate operation, too. It was one that required all these conditions to be in place at the right time in the right place. You couldn't afford leaks. We couldn't afford anything out there that would have endangered the mission and gotten people killed or killed off the mission and the optionality. We didn't even know if the mission was going to happen. How can you notify something you're not even sure if it can happen? Because in order for it to happen, you needed to have weather conditions in place. He needed to be at the right place at the right time. We needed to have forces prepared to go. There were a lot of factors in place. It was a trigger-based operation. But you can't notify that, number one, because you don't even know if it's going to happen, if those conditions will ever align. And number two, you can't risk it being disclosed. But this was not an attack on Venezuela. This was a law enforcement function to capture an indicted drug trafficker. And of course, we needed the Department of War to support it because they do have anti-aircraft missiles that could shoot down those helicopters.
But will you?
We had to take down radars. We had to take down those anti-air elements on the way in and on the way out, and that's what this was limited to.
But will you seek congressional approval for any further action in Venezuela or the region?
Well, we will seek congressional approval for actions that require congressional approval, but otherwise they will get congressional notification. And this is not an operation that required congressional approval. In fact, this is an operation akin to what virtually every single president for the last 40 years has conducted. The difference is that when it's Donald Trump, all these Democrats go bonkers.
Yeah, amen to that, Marco Rubio. Phenomenal job as Secretary of State. And he's absolutely spot on. He's absolutely correct. And you can hear Kristen Welker in the clip. Well, you promise right now to the American people that anything else that you do, you will get a congressional approval. Rubio says no. We'll seek congressional approval if we need congressional approval. If we're going to declare war on a country, we'll go and get congressional approval. Capturing Nicolas Maduro, as Rubio noted, who had been indicted in the United States of America going back 5 years, indicting him and capturing him, essentially extraditing him to the United States, which is what happened, is not something that requires congressional approval. But now Democrats want to argue semantics. Because again, some of them can't really argue the issue here. Again, they're going to come out and say Maduro's a good guy. We like Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. We like the Venezuelan people literally killing each other on the streets over toilet paper. That's what he's going to argue. That's what Democrats have to argue? No, of course not. So now they have to get into the semantic battle of, did he get congressional approval? Was this authorized? Why didn't Congress know? Well, I think as Rubio stated pretty well, they didn't know exactly when this was going to happen. They tried doing it for 4 days, but the weather conditions were no good. The weather finally broke. They conducted the operations at 1 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock local time in Venezuela Saturday morning. And that's the situation. Plain and simple. A great comment coming in on our Rumble live chat this morning. Makes it hard to know when Trump is actually doing something bad. That's my boy who cried wolf point. I mean, folks, every freaking day, I sit here, I keep up to date with the news, prepping for the morning show I do on the Carolina Journal show that I do, prepping here for the podcast. Every single day, I sit here. I've got, right next to me right now, I've got a 4-box on with Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, and BBC, which, by the way, Nicolas Maduro currently being brought to a New York City courtroom. He's set to be arraigned at noon today. I watch this all day. I have it on all day, which is probably bad for my mental health. Have it on all day. And every single thing that anybody in this administration does is the worst thing that's ever happened in U.S. history. Every single thing. And so, yes, to your point in the Rumble live chat, it makes it hard to know when Trump is actually doing something bad. This is the situation Democrats have walked into. And they want to, point fun at the Republicans, point fun at the right and say, oh, you guys are just lackeys. You support everything Trump does. I mean, when you guys claim that everything that comes out of his mouth, every decision that he makes is the worst thing that's ever happened in U.S. history, it's hard to put any sort of stock or credit into that. That's exactly the whole story of the boy who cried wolf. He cried wolf every single day. There was never a wolf. The one time there was a wolf, he cried wolf. Everybody said, go to hell. Go pound sand. There's no wolf. You've been crying the same thing for months. And what happened? He got eaten by the wolf. I believe that's how the story ends, right? He ends up being eaten by the wolf because nobody believed him. It's exactly what the Democrats have created here with their media hysteria over the Trump administration. And I guess they just can't wrap their head around another situation that they have created. They've done it to themselves. Let me just say this, and we got to take a quick break. If those in the media and those on the political left were even just like a little bit more objective with President Trump, if they could just take the blinders off for just a couple of minutes a day, if they could just put the Trump derangement syndrome aside in their brain for just a couple of minutes every single day, I think things would be much better for them. But they're incapable of doing so. I genuinely believe this. They are incapable of doing so. And so you see what the reaction is. Everything is constant, sky is falling. And as you would expect, I think it's a normal human reaction. When you're told the sky is falling every single day by those in the media and you walk out your front door and in fact, the sky is not falling, you eventually write it off. You eventually say, these people are not honest brokers of truth. These individuals are not giving honest information. And that's exactly the situation that we're in right now. So Nicolas Maduro had already been indicted in the United States. We'll get into some of those details coming up here in just a couple of minutes as the Nick Craig Show rolls along on a Monday morning, our first regularly scheduled show of 2026. I want to let you know about the law group here in Wilmington, and when legal challenges arise, make sure you put your trust in the law group. Since 2003, their experienced attorneys have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across the eastern half of our state. Whether you're facing a divorce, navigating a real estate transaction, or maybe you're in a position where you need a strong defense, the law group has your back. Their dedicated team ensures your questions are answered and issues are resolved as quickly as possible. Great news, folks. They're located in downtown Wilmington and just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. Give them a call, 910-251-6088, or their website, lawgroupnc.com. The Law Group, experience and dedication you can rely on. Appreciate Melissa Gott and the amazing team over at the Law Group for their continued support of the Nick Craig Show. All right, we'll grab a quick break. On the other side, we'll actually walk through what are the charges that were levied against Nicolas Maduro, right? Because those on the left want to seemingly claim there was no threat, there was no issue here. Why did Trump do this? Why is Trump so awful? What actually were the charges brought against him going back now 5 years? We'll get into those details coming up here in just a couple of minutes as the Nick Craig Show rolls along on a Monday morning, streaming live 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. And welcome back to the Nick Craig Show. Thanks for spending some time with us here on this first full show, I should say, of the new year. Did a special broadcast on Saturday. You can check that out in your favorite podcast app. You can also listen to it or watch it, I should say, on all of our live platforms, YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. It's about a 90 or so minute show. I did about 40 minutes of open, played the President Donald Trump's comments in their entirety Saturday morning as the president briefed the nation from Mar-a-Lago as to what was taking place with the Venezuela situation as it literally was unfolding live. Don't forget to check that out in your favorite podcast app or on any of our live video platforms. Also want to remind you that you can support the show, get access to daily show notes and more by visiting patreon.com/Nick Craig. You can support the show for as little as $5 or $10 a month, patreon.com/Nick Craig. Thanks to all of our great Patreons. Also, our monthly hangout, we get together once a month, chat about the news and topics of the day, all of that, patreon.com/Nick Craig. So we're continuing our coverage of a lot of the reaction of the Maduro capture by the United States Saturday, which took place early Saturday morning here across the United States. And the reaction we've heard from the former Vice President Kamala Harris. We heard from member Chris Murphy, the Democrat senator from Connecticut, seemingly saying that there's no reason for this to take place, pretty much carrying water for the Venezuelan dictator. And so I started looking into this, and this guy's got pretty serious charges that have been levied against him in the United States. Here's a post from Attorney General Pam Bondi, and we'll get into the charges, which span all the way back to the first Trump administration in 2020. She wrote this in a post over the weekend, saying in part, Nicolas Maduro and his wife have been indicted in the Southern District of New York. Nicolas Maduro has been charged with narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices against the United States. They will soon face the full wrath of the American justice system on American soil in American courts. On behalf of the entire United States Department of Justice, I want to thank President Trump for having the courage to demand accountability on behalf of the American people, and a huge thank you to our brave military who conducted the incredible and highly successful mission to capture these two alleged international narco traffickers. Now, those charges that Attorney General Pam Bondi laid out, I'd argue those are pretty serious. Narco-terrorism conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy. Those are some pretty serious charges, right? But if you listen to the media's reaction to this, which of course is the same as the Democrats' party, you would think that Nicolas Maduro, just some random president in Venezuela, hasn't multiple times completely thrown out election results that didn't go his way, is not responsible for insane amounts of drug trafficking across the United States and the rest of the world. You'd believe none of it. And so you've got this unsealed indictment that lays out these charges, and many of these things go back 25 years. Reading directly from the indictment, for more than 25 years, Venezuelan leaders have, quote, abused their position of public trust and corrupted once legitimate institutions to import tons of cocaine into the United States, end quote. That is directly from the indictment brought against Maduro and his wife. It goes on to allege that starting in the early 1990s, Maduro and his co-defendants have partnered with international drug trafficking organizations, including Mexico's Sinaloa cartel and the Zetas, as well as Colombian narco-terrorist groups and the Venezuelan prison gang Tren de Aragua. All of those groups in unison to ship illicit drugs into the United States of America, which doesn't seem to add up to anything that we just heard from Senator Chris Murphy. That there's no risk, there's no threat, there's no concern about Venezuela. Most of their drugs go to Europe. It doesn't matter that 10% of it's coming into the United States. It doesn't matter that the Venezuelan street prison gang Tren de Aragua is operating in the United States, operating in U.S. cities. Folks, this is not a right-wing conspiracy. In the middle parts of 2025, here in North Carolina, you had multiple Tren de Aragua gang members that were arrested in both Raleigh and Charlotte. So this idea that none of this is real, the idea that this is just some fairy tale propped up by the Trump administration is complete and total nonsense. As the indictment states, Maduro and all his cronies were working with the Mexican drug cartels, the Colombian drug cartels, and Venezuelan street gangs to import illicit drugs into the United States of America. And this is not a new thing. Again, it goes all the way back to the 1990s. The Venezuelan people in recent years have found themselves ever more frustrated with the situation in Venezuela. It was not long ago that they were literally stabbing each other. This is again, not a joke. You can go and read about it. People were killing each other on the streets in Venezuela over toilet paper. Toilet paper. Imagine stabbing and killing somebody or shooting and killing them over toilet paper. That's what was going on not very long ago in the streets of Venezuela. Their currency has been completely devalued. Their economy is a skeleton of what it once was. And during all of this period of time, and I found this to be shocking when I learned it this weekend, Venezuela has a larger oil reserve than countries and places throughout the Middle East and places like Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Isn't that remarkable? They have got more oil at their disposal than the Middle East. They are the largest country in terms of land mass and size that has oil reserves larger than anybody else's. The country should be thriving. The country should be seeing unimaginable amounts of economic prosperity and success. Meanwhile, most of their country, most of the citizens are living in abject poverty. It's essentially a third world country. Meanwhile, they are literally sitting on liquid gold for all intents and purposes. Oil, which they can import and ship around anywhere throughout the world. But that's not what's happening. Why? Because Maduro and his cronies are all interested in the drug trade. They're interested in working with the Sinaloa drug cartel. They're interested in working with Colombian drug runners, and they're interested in working with Venezuelan street gangs to import illicit drugs into parts of Europe and the United States. That's their interest, not using the unbelievable natural resources that they have available to lift the country up and bring it to unimaginable levels of economic success and prosperity. He's not interested in that. He's interested in running drugs. Him and all of his buddies getting rich during this drug running operation. The indictment also details specific actions that Maduro allegedly took as part of the conspiracy charges against him. For example, the indictment states that between 2006 and 2008, when he was serving as the foreign minister, that Maduro sold Venezuelan diplomatic passports to known drug traffickers. This is now a direct quote from the indictment. In order to assist traffickers seeking to move drugs more throughout Mexico to Venezuela under diplomatic cover. He also allegedly facilitated flights of private planes under diplomatic cover to bring drug proceeds back from Mexico to Venezuela as well. Prosecutors allege that Maduro also worked together with other individuals for years to traffic cocaine that had previously been seized by Venezuelan law enforcement. The indictment says that Maduro had their own state-sponsored gangs to protect their illicit operations, and that they ordered kidnappings, beatings, and murders against those who owed them drug money or otherwise undermined their drug trafficking operation. This is who the Democrats are now standing in the court with. This is who the Democrats are now fighting for on the international stage. This is the guy. These are the alleged charges against him. Innocent till proven guilty. He's going to go through the United States court system. He's in a New York City court today, Southern District, where these indictments were levied back in 2020 during the first Trump administration. This is who the Democrats have ponied up with. This is who the Democrats are now waving the flag for. Meanwhile, on the streets of Venezuela over the weekend, what did you see? People in the streets waving the Venezuelan flag, waving the American flag, because the dictator, the illegitimate president in Nicolas Maduro, is no longer in that country. Just think about the compare and contrast on that. In the United States, the reaction from the left is, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. Meanwhile, the people in Venezuela, who have been put in such horrific economic conditions because of the Maduro regime, are cheering, celebrating, waving American and Venezuelan flags in the streets. Can you find any different reaction than that? But that's what we're talking about. That just goes to show you how ridiculous the reaction has been from the left. Now, those videos that I'm talking about, you're not going to see those on CNN. You're not going to see those videos on MSNBC. You're not going to see those on NBC or ABC or CBS. You're going to see them on X. You're going to see them on Instagram. You're going to see them on Facebook, because that is the information age in which we live. We don't need to glue to the television for 24 hours a day to figure out what's going on. And so while the media, mainstream media here in the United States, doesn't want to show that reaction because it completely blows apart their notion, their idea that this is a horrific action, unconstitutional action taken by the president, the people in Venezuela could not be any more happy. They could not be any more thrilled. Now, the big question is, where do we go from here? The president has made the point that temporarily the United States will be involved in Venezuela. What does that look like? I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and blow smoke up your rear end and tell you, oh, I know exactly how this is going to play out. I don't. This is a very pivotal moment for the Trump administration. This is a very important thing for them to oversee and make sure they handle correctly. There was a question asked to the president on Saturday about nation building. I'm not interested in nation building. I'm not. You shouldn't be either. The United States has a horrific, and I mean horrific, track record when it comes to nation building. I'm not interested in that. I don't truly believe that the president is interested in that either. So what comes of this in the days, weeks, and months? What kind of government do the Venezuelan people want? All of that is going to be very pivotal. But I'm going to end where I started earlier this morning on the show. This was an unbelievably swift and successful operation conducted by this administration. It is something that had been planned. They had been waiting for the weather, the conditions to break to make sure that they could conduct the operation successfully. And from every single account, from the fact that no U.S. service members were severely injured or killed, no strategic resources were lost, no helicopters went down, nothing like that taking place. Most of Maduro's private security were apparently killed by U.S. forces, and the fact that Maduro has in fact been captured. Here is a video coming in live right now of Maduro landing in a helicopter in New York City, where he is set to be indicted. Be arraigned, I should say. He's already been indicted. Being arraigned later on today, coming up in a court in New York City, the Southern District of New York. Being perp walked by, I think it says DEA on the guy's jacket. Being perp walked by the DEA. An unbelievably successful operation. I'll say it one more time. The thing that I appreciate about Donald Trump more than anything else is the strength that you get. Not every decision is going to be perfect. Not every decision is going to work out perfectly either. I understand that. I'm not oblivious to that. With decisive action comes a risk. With decisive action, bad things can happen. But the fact that we are now back in a position as the United States of America, where we are leading from a position of strength and not cowering down to everybody else across the globe, is to me a huge win. So we'll follow the Maduro situation unfolding in a courtroom today. We'll continue to follow the reaction across the globe. No surprise there that it will continue. News this morning, Tim Walz apparently set to drop out of the 2026 Minnesota governor's race. This is after an insane expose last week by independent journalist Nick Shirley. You know, the news cycle typically is a little bit slower this time of year, but it is anything but slow right now. We'll keep you up to date with all of the information, all of the details right here on the Nick Craig Show. Well, that's going to do it for a Monday edition. Thanks to the Law Group here in Wilmington for their continued support. Melissa Gott and her team. Visit them online, lawgroupnc.com, or give them a call, 910-251-6088. The Nick Craig Show streams live weekday mornings, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook. Is also available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts, and now can be heard nightly, 9 to 10 p.m. on Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 WBT. We're back here tomorrow morning with the Nick Craig Show.